Your dog follows you everywhere. You stand up, and within seconds they stand up too. You walk toward the kitchen, and soft footsteps appear behind you. You stop for a moment, and they stop as well, settling just close enough to keep you in sight. Most of the time, they don't seem to want anything. No food, no toy, no walk, just you. For most dog owners, this behavior feels so ordinary that it almost disappears into the background of everyday life. We assume we understand it. Maybe the dog is bored. Maybe it is hoping for attention. Maybe it simply learned that staying close to its owner leads to good things. But animal behavior researchers suggest the real explanation may be far more interesting than that. The quiet shadow moving behind you through the house may not be a simple habit at all. It may be the echo of instincts that formed thousands of years ago, long before dogs slept on couches or waited by front doors, back when staying close to a trusted individual could mean the difference between safety and danger. In other words, when your dog follows you from room to room, it might not just be watching you, it might be staying close to the place where its world feels safest. That instinct becomes easier to understand when you look at where dogs came from in the first place. Long before dogs slept on couches or waited by front doors, their ancestors survived in packs where staying close to the group was not just social behavior, it was a matter of survival. In the wild, distance could mean danger. A wolf that wandered too far from the pack risked losing protection, missing a hunt, or encountering threats alone. So when the leader moved, the rest of the pack moved as well. Not because anyone gave an order, and not because they were trained to do so, but because the safest place to be was near the individual guiding the group. Cooperation, protection, and awareness all depended on that simple rule: stay close. Thousands of years of domestication have changed many things about dogs, but some of those deeper instincts remain remarkably intact. Inside a modern home, the environment is different, but the brain that evolved to navigate a social group is still there. In many situations, the dog begins to treat its owner as the central reference point in that social structure. The person moving through the house becomes, in a loose sense, the equivalent of the leader of the group. Following them from room to room may simply be the modern expression of an ancient instinct. Staying close to the individual who represents safety, stability, and the center of the pack. That social instinct explains why dogs stay close, but it may not fully explain how closely they seem to tune into us. For many years, people have shared touching stories about dogs sensing their owner's sadness, excitement, or fear. Someone cries and the dog quietly comes over. Someone feels anxious and the dog refuses to leave their side. These stories are powerful, and many owners are convinced their dogs understand exactly how they feel. From a scientific point of view, however, anecdotes are not enough. For a long time, researchers remained cautious, because emotional stories, no matter how sincere, are not considered reliable evidence in behavioral science. As a result, the question of whether dogs truly recognize human emotions stayed controversial for decades. Some scientists believed dogs were simply reacting to tone of voice or body movement rather than interpreting emotions themselves. Others suspected there might be something more complex happening. In recent years, researchers have begun testing this question more carefully. Psychologists working at the University of Lincoln in the United Kingdom, together with colleagues from the University of São Paulo in Brazil, designed studies specifically aimed at separating language, sound, and visual cues. Their findings have started to suggest that dogs may be capable of recognizing emotional signals in humans in ways that go beyond simple conditioning. To explore that possibility more carefully, the researchers designed a simple but revealing experiment. 17 adult dogs were brought into a quiet, controlled environment. None of them had ever been trained to recognize emotions or perform similar tasks. That detail mattered, because the scientists wanted to observe how dogs reacted naturally, without relying on commands or learned behaviors. The dogs were then shown images of human faces displaying different emotional expressions. Some faces appeared happy, relaxed, and friendly. Others showed anger or tension. At the same time, the dogs heard recordings of human voices expressing emotional tones. Sometimes the signals matched. A smiling face appeared on the screen while a cheerful voice played through the speakers. In other moments, the signals conflicted. A happy voice might be paired with an angry face, or an irritated tone might accompany a smiling expression. One detail of the experiment was particularly important. The voices used in the recordings were spoken in Portuguese, a language the dogs had never heard before. This ensured that the animals were not reacting to familiar words or commands they had learned in everyday life. Instead, the researchers wanted to see whether the dogs responded to emotional cues themselves, the tone of the voice, and the expression on the face rather than language. What happened next showed a surprisingly consistent pattern. When the emotional tone of the voice matched the facial expression, the dogs paid noticeably closer attention. Many leaned forward, focused on the screen, or turned their heads slightly as if trying to process the signals more carefully. When the cues suggested positive emotions, the dogs often appeared relaxed and curious. Some wagged their tails gently, while others stuck out their tongues in a friendly, relaxed way. But when the signals suggested anger or negativity, their reactions shifted. Some dogs stiffened slightly. Others became more alert, watching the screen with intense focus. A few even growled quietly, as if responding to a potential threat. The most revealing moments occurred when the emotional signals did not match. When the dog saw a smiling face but heard an angry voice, or saw an angry face paired with a cheerful tone, many appeared briefly confused. Some barked softly or shifted their posture, almost as if the emotional message did not make sense. According to researcher Kun Guo from the University of Lincoln, these reactions suggest that dogs are not simply responding to isolated signals like sound or facial movement. Instead, they appear capable of combining information from different senses, what they see and what they hear, to interpret emotional state. Over time, their brains may build simplified categories of emotional meaning, separating signals into basic impressions such as positive or negative, safe or threatening. At the same time, the researchers emphasize an important limitation. These findings do not mean that dogs understand human emotions in the same complex way humans understand one another. Their responses are likely part of a broader social mechanism that evolved to help animals living closely with humans communicate more effectively. In other words, dogs may not fully grasp the details of what we feel, but they are remarkably sensitive to the emotional atmosphere around us, a sensitivity that helps strengthen the bond between dogs and the people they live with. That sensitivity to emotional signals becomes even more interesting when researchers look at what happens over longer periods of time. In 2019, scientists at Linköping University in Sweden explored a deeper layer of the connection between dogs and their owners by studying long-term stress patterns in both. Instead of measuring stress in a single moment, the researchers analyzed cortisol levels stored in hair samples, which can reveal hormonal patterns accumulated over weeks and even months. Cortisol is one of the body's primary stress hormones, and tracking it over time offers a clearer picture of an individual's emotional baseline. The team examined 58 dog owner pairs and discovered something striking. The stress levels of the dogs closely mirrored those of their owners. Calm owners tended to have calmer dogs, while owners experiencing higher stress often had dogs with similarly elevated cortisol levels. Even more revealing was the direction of this relationship. The owner's stress predicted the dog's stress more strongly than the reverse, suggesting that dogs are constantly monitoring subtle emotional signals from the humans they live with and adjusting their own emotional state in response. Seen together, these discoveries begin to explain something many dog owners notice every day but rarely question. When your dog follows you from one room to another, it is probably not just looking for food, entertainment, or a walk. The behavior reflects a far deeper relationship that has been shaped over thousands of years of living alongside humans. Ancient pack instincts encourage dogs to remain close to the individual they trust most, while their remarkable sensitivity to emotional signals keeps them tuned into the person they depend on. Over time, these instincts and emotional responses blend together. What looks like a simple habit is actually the result of evolution, learning, and social bonding working at the same time. In that sense, when your dog quietly trails behind you through the house, it is not merely observing what you are doing. It is staying near the person who represents safety, stability, and the center of its world.